For most of its 7 decades in power, China's ruling Communist Party has laid out its blueprint on how to move the country forward through a series of 5-year plans. But what do they entail, and how successful have they been? These plans are the backbone of China's development strategy. The first one, drafted in the early 1950s, was modeled after the Soviet Union's economic development plan and included personal advice from Soviet leader Joseph Stalin himself. At the time, the Communist Party had been in power for only a few years, and China was just emerging from the Korean War. With Soviet expertise and investment, the party made increasing China's industrial capacity its main priority under its first 5-year plan. Between 1953 and 1957, China embarked on nearly 700 industrial projects. It launched the first Chinese-made car, the nation's first homemade fighter jet, and completed a monumental engineering project, the double-decker Wuhan-Yangtze Great Bridge. Some of the 5-year plans have led China to great economic successes, particularly since the 1980s. A focus on rural and economic reforms improved the lives of millions of Chinese citizens and saw China's economy evolve from being entirely planned to one driven largely by the market. More economic reforms and a move to embrace market competition in the mid-1990s gave rise to a flourishing private sector in China. And by the 2010s, the 5-year plans emphasized tax reform and promoting the country's soft power on the global stage. Most recently, that's involved trying to move China's economy towards being driven by innovation and technology. But sometimes the 5-year plans didn't always produce the right results. China's leaders were so focused on industrialization in their first 5-year plan that agricultural production was not able to keep up with industrial output. Chinese leader Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward, launched in 1958, saw millions of farmers move into factories. That shift, coupled with natural disasters and officials who vastly overstated how much grain was available, resulted in the Great Famine, a period where tens of millions of people starved to death. At the same time, China's relations with the Soviet Union soured. Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev stopped all economic agreements with China. He pulled out all Soviet experts who were working in the country, a deal that dealt a heavy blow to China's fragile economy. By the mid-1960s, the Communist Party had to reassess its priorities, from rapidly developing the economy to feeding, clothing, and housing its citizens. That 5-year plan also set out goals for diversifying the military and moving heavy industries into China's inland provinces, but it was thrown off by the decade-long Cultural Revolution. In the 1980s, China's transition from a planned economy to a market-based one caused internal strife. The economy overheated, and citizens became frustrated about inflation and growing corruption. Those issues were among the grievances raised during the mass protests in Tiananmen Square in 1989, which came to a head in the June 4th government crackdown on demonstrators. China's decades-long focus on rapid economic growth has had consequences for the environment and has led to strict policies on population control and a widening wealth gap that the party only started addressing as a priority in the last 20 years. China hasn't consistently followed 5-year plans since the first one was introduced in 1953. Not all of them have been approved by the national legislature, and it wasn't until 1986 that a plan was issued and approved on time.
The final throes of a very important deal.
Former US President Donald Trump made it tricky for China's leaders to follow their plan for 2016 to 2020, after his accusations of unfair commercial practices and intellectual property theft sparked the US-China trade war. The COVID-19 pandemic also delivered supply and demand shocks to the world economy. Those are factors that today's Communist Party leaders are taking into consideration for their next 5-year plan. But if history serves as an example, the goals they will put forward will be tailored to the times and aimed at improving the lives of Chinese citizens, maintaining stability, and keeping the party in power.